Welcome everybody. We are back here at the Bettor Sports Show breaking down some more MMA for this Saturday's UFC fight card. And not gonna lie, this is a bit of a tricky one. I looked it up and down. Tons of huge favorites. It has more juice on this card than pre-USADA UFC. This is like the TRT Tour of cards, right? Tons of juicy juice floating around. So I'm doing well. Randy, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Great card last week. Lots of shocks and surprises there. A couple things went a different way. We had a couple things right, couple things wrong.
Yeah, full disclosure. I had Buckley. I was right about that. I was
Yeah,
completely wrong about Blanchfield.
we both
So
we both were. That was actually were you able to catch that one
I
or no?
did, yeah, I sprinkled it, but after I
The,
saw and here's something valuable I can share with you all. I had a friend of mine share with me that, Aaron Blanchfield to win by submission, which is probably like, her main method of victory coming into this fight, that's what a lot of people thought, was boosted on multiple different sports books. Generally, that's a bad sign. They never give you a boost on the thing you wanna bet unless it's losing. So when I saw that, I got queasy, there was vomit on my sweater already, mom spaghetti, I was nervous. I still bet Blanchfield. I thought maybe she would win by decision, but nope, got trapped. They pulled the rug completely.
I gotta say I was really shocked. So full disclosure to the first jujitsu gym I ever went to was Silver Fox, which is where she's out of. I was super surprised to hear the corner work rounds 2 through 5. It was just fully encouraged to continue and try and box. There was no corner advice to make it dirty, grapple, shoot the takedown, uh, with work with where she works well. And that was honestly more of a surprise than again myself. I was a big fan of the finish by submission there, and just very shocked by the result and the direction that went. I think a lot of people were too. That was, I think, probably the upset of the night.
Yeah, I was very surprised as well. Just unusual corner work. I'll never forget. You hear some wild stuff listening to the corners in MMA. I remember the Dustin versus Khabib fight. His corner told him you have to stop getting taken down, and he was like, "Yeah, no shit. I'll try that, buddy. I'll try that."
I have one of those on actually one of the fights that we go over. It's funny you bring that up.
Let's jump right in. Which fight is it?
Well, the first one I have, not the one that I had mentioned, but so this is the third fight on the prelims. Uh, so, like you said, a lot of juice on this card. You have Gene Matsumoto. He's 14-0. Most recently, he beat prospect Casey Tanner, who's now 6-1. So that was his first loss was to Gene, and this was on Dana White's Contender Series. Overall, he's got 6 wins by decision, 5 subs, three KOs. So he's got the ability to finish quite a few fights, but he's also a smart fighter. And so that's a testament to his 14-0 record. But this fight's going to be a test. Um, and I see Dan Argueta here uh, pulling off a possible upset. He's 1-1 in the UFC, both fights ending in decision. But he most recently beat prospect Nick Aguirre by decision, and that's a big fight that I went back and watched some tape on. Dan is dangerous. Reminds me actually a bit like Nate the Train from last week.
Hmm.
He is very aggressive, very forward. He will make a fight dirty if he has to. He also lost to Damon Jackson, who's on this card, and which I like just the experience test. Even though he lost to him, Damon Jackson, I'm a fan. Uh, and he's no stranger to the UFC. Has an 11 fight resume with the UFC, so not a terrible loss. So him being 1-1 in the UFC, this is Gene's first big step up. Aside from Dana White's Contender Series, I see, you know, Dan just edges out the experience level here. Both guys are pretty interesting prospects, but odds wise, what do we have? Matsumoto's at a -165, or Guetta's at a +135. Just with the experience edge, I gotta lean on a dog here. And again, it's just funny that you mentioned just to open up the card. There is a lot of juice here. I have 3 juice picks, and that's one of the 3 early prelims.
Yeah, I could definitely see that situation, like a Christian Rodriguez, where you go in there, the prospect's supposed to beat you, and you just go, nope, nope. No hype train. You're not getting anything easily here. In the UFC, we see that constantly, right? Young fighters coming off the Contender Series have a little bit of hype behind them. They get in there, the lights are very bright, some of that inexperience kicks in. It can be daunting, right? You've worked your whole life to get to this one moment, and then here it is, and you're suddenly in deep waters. So yeah, that's a trend we see a lot, and I could definitely see that playing out in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, again, don't get me wrong. I mean, arguably he's the favorite for a reason. You have to respect an undefeated resume, even if it's on a more regional circuit and smaller organizations. He's just got a lot of decisions on his record, even though he's got the ability to finish. That's why, again, I could understand why the odds are a little heavy on his side. But yeah, I see a spoil potential here for a 14-0 fighter who maybe hasn't faced the toughest competition. This is arguably his toughest competition yet.
I think that's a great breakdown of that fight. I like an underdog as well in one of the fights I'm looking at here on the prelims. Piera Rodriguez versus Cynthia Cavillo. This is Cynthia's do or die moment. She's lost multiple fights coming into this, and she's lost, I believe, 2 in a row by split decision. You have to imagine that's an absolute heartbreaker for an athlete to have it go to the judges. One judge sees it your way, two don't. I think, unfortunately, if she loses here, she could be in danger of being cut. And anytime I see a situation like that where someone, right, it's do or die, make or break, you win or you out, I think they really come, they push it, they're trying to win the fight, right? Not to say that they weren't trying to win before, but they just like can dig deep and find that extra gear. And the big thing here, why I like her, is that I've bet on Pierre Rodriguez before. I think she's an excellent striker. Her main path of victory is to stay at distance and jab and cross and strike you to a decision. She doesn't have a ton of finishing power, right? She wins by decision, generally, 30 more, 40 more significant strikes than you. Cavillo, I think, is going to be able to take her down. We've seen Rodriguez being taken down in the UFC. And if she can just get her down once, right, and just hold her there, that's one round down. You have a hedge opportunity, especially if that's the first round. You can bet Cavillo pre-fight, and then once the odds change, you could hedge your bet on Rodriguez. So that's how I'm going to be looking to play this fight. I like the veteran with the back up against the wall, with that wrestling pedigree and the grappling, and that's my read on that fight.
I couldn't agree more. Again, when in doubt, I mean, again, it's hard to argue against the resume there as well. But anybody who's got high level wrestling, that seems to again almost lapped the necessity of jujitsu. If you could just have great foundational wrestling
Mhm.
and modern MMA, it's almost arguably, I won't say definitively, but arguably, it'll get you further than just a solid jujitsu game. So I agree with your lean as well. I like the direction.
Thank you. Now that's one where we agree, and we were actually talking today. So there's a fight where we disagree on these prelims, and I think that's a logical place to go next. So Randy, why are you right and why am I wrong? Tell the people.
So interesting too that we have two fights on the women's side of the card. Um, so again, Jermaine Durandamy, no stranger to hardcore UFC fans, arguably casual fans as well. Definitely one of the more popular names, but for good reason. Uh, Probably the third time so far I've mentioned resume, and she's one of those fighters. Again, just has long resume. She's fought the who's who. Um, Talented. Can she point fight? Yes, but she has the ability to finish. Uh, your point, I want to say when we briefly talked about it earlier, is the age stands out to you as a negative factor. My negative factor for her is really more the layoff. I believe her last fight was 2020, 2021. I may have that wrong, but I believe that her round three submission against Juliana Pena was in 2020, unless I wrote down the wrong date. So about a 4 year layoff, that's dangerous, as we know. But I mean, she's beaten the who's who, 7 victories and 2 of her losses, only to Amanda Nunes. Uh, Nora Dumont, I just think she's going to be a little bit out of her element. What I could find on her fights that I could pull up in the past couple days, it's just there's nothing that stands out there, and I don't have reason to believe that something will. Can she strike? Yes, but I don't think there's knockout power. I don't see any good setup and footwork. They're both pretty horrendous rhythm steppers. They gather their feet constantly, so you know exactly when they're striking. So they're both going to be very vulnerable to accidental counter striking. It's going to happen. It can go either way. I do lean GDR in this, but stand by the same thing I said last week. When a fight could go either way this way, I think the fight to finish by TKO, KO, or DQ, uh, probably has the best value here. I don't think this one will go to decision. I don't think Dumont will get, I believe, what, the eighth decision victory in a row for. She hasn't finished anybody in her pro career either. I just don't. I don't see many paths to victory for her. That's my take on.
Okay, so you like fight to end by KO, you like GDR, so you like the plus money side. So even if, say, she wins by decision, you're still making some money there. Now, I'm on Dumont for a couple of reasons. First off, Randy mentioned the layoff and the age. Durandamy is also coming off a pregnancy, and for one, right, I could never ever do that shit. God didn't make a mistake when He made me a man. He was like, "Yeah, no, there's only one option for you, bud. You can't be doing a childbirth." So, with that being said, you have to acknowledge the effects of pregnancy on the body of a female athlete, especially once you're higher up there in age, around the age of 40. I do think the effects of a fight camp, cutting weight, I don't think we can overlook that, unfortunately, right? I'm trying to be fair here. I know it can come off as
This
a little.
may be a side banter addition. I want to say Mackenzie Dern coming off her first fight since having her child. I believe she got the W. So that may be a factor working against you. I'll have to check after this. I'll have to fact check. But that is the only other fighter that actually I know of, uh, and at least in recent history. But that's a very valid point you make. I didn't even realize that myself.
Yeah, especially, I don't know how old Mackenzie was. I don't believe she was
Right, the
quite,
age discrepancy there too, of
yeah.
course. Yeah.
And on top of that, Norma, to your point, right? There's not a ton that stands out, and that's why I like her. She can take her opponent's strength and she can just neutralize it, right? She can make the fight dirty, grimy, gritty, tons of clinching against the fence, takedowns, right? If Durandamy is winning with the point fights, Dumont will just charge in, take a few shots, and push her against the fence and just hold her there, try and wrestle her down and get the decision. And that's why I like that. I think especially as the fight wears on, the cardio could be an issue. The layoff, we have no idea how she's gonna look coming into this fight. I like the younger fighter who's gonna make it a gritty, disgusting clinch fest against the cage, throwing the elbows, throwing the knees, and just staying there and working. So that's my particular read on this. And yeah, we're on opposite sides. Fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I definitely your side is definitely probably a bit more realistic. I'm probably overlooking the ring rust factor, if that does exist. A 4-year layoff is, you know, we hardly get better at anything that we don't do, right? You know
Mhm.
what I mean? But with that being said, if the theme of the night to me, for me, especially regarding my picks here, is resume, there's nothing impressive about, to me at least, who Dumont's beat. But with that being said, if she beats GDR, that is the most impressive win on her resume, and it would be interesting to see who she gets next. Um, but yeah, I just don't have, I can't see it your way on this one.
Well, we're gonna find out. And then just recapping my ever thoughts, like I said, this is a very juicy card. Admittedly, I don't see a ton of spots. I'm a very low volume bettor. I like to pick my spots and snipe. And last week, if you saw our breakdown, that strategy worked very well. I pointed out the fact that I liked Bill Algeo, but I didn't want to lay over 2-1 in an MMA fight because it's so volatile. And look what happens, he gets finished. I talked
Right.
about Rice McKee. There was tons of line movement in his favor. There was a time when I was a younger bettor, I would have said, "Oh, yeah, betting market thinks he's going to win. I think he's going to win." But now, after watching MMA, seeing the market be wrong, right, those line moves just they don't work out. I was able to take a step back, be like, I just can't see it. Same thing. It was a close fight, split decision.
So it's actually interesting. So your advice that you gave earlier that episode about occasionally, if you find an opportunity in the live odds, they will be there. So I kept in mind your breakdown of it, and as I'm watching, I wanted to say I put the live wager in about halfway through because I could see how they were fighting. They were doing a lot of grapple wrestling against the cage. It was a like plus 700 odds, but I just put it down for 10 for the fight to end by split or majority decision.
Mhm.
And I can't believe it actually went to that at the split there. I don't know if you saw at the end of the fight, it was like a 4-minute wait for them to get the cards right. So I don't know. I'm not sure what happened there, but I got blessed with an absolute Donk of a live bet. That was the only live bet I put in all night too. So that was a nice call that you had mentioned in the previous episode about the live wagers, and the live opportunities will be there if you feel like
Mhm.
a fight is too close to call. There are things you could catch halfway through into a fight. Even, minute left, 1 minute left in the second round still might not be too late.
And just to add to his point there, I had a friend of mine tell me in Discord, unfortunately, I couldn't get it in time. At the beginning of round 3 between Weidman and Silva, Weidman was only -158 on FanDuel, up 2 rounds in a 3-round fight. That is absurd value, right? Absurd ending to the fight too.
I'm actually, has there been an update on that? Because I'm surprised that hasn't been appealed at all, or is that going to just completely stand as a W? I was waiting to see something come out about that. If anything, I'm surprised the other camp didn't protest the decision.
Yeah, the New York State Athletic Commission released a statement saying, "He's still my boy, deal with it." That's it, right? Nothing to see here. Hometown fighter gets a W, everybody
No,
move on. Yep.
I'm not mad about it. All right, what do we got next?
Like I said, I don't even love a ton on this card, and just some general advice. UFC 300's right around the corner. You know you're gonna be wanting to bet a ton of fights on that card because there are so many quality fighters. There's
Mm.
nothing wrong with going light here, just picking 1 or 2 bets. So outside of the main event, that's all I got.
All right, yeah, no, that's I got one other one. Where is it on the card here? I went out of order. I was expecting to do that GDR fight last with you. Yeah, I got the co-main event. I got the co-main.
Awesome. Give us the co-main, and I'll close us out.
So we got Alexander Hernandez, Damon Jackson. We mentioned briefly earlier regarding the prelims. Um, so Damon Jackson, previous 7 fights, his opponents have a cumulative record of 104 wins and 33 losses. This guy only takes hard fights. Uh, Saw Ilya Taporia at one point in his career. He lost to him. And again, he's still undefeated. So I think he saw him when he was around 7-0, 8-0. I'm not sure if that was actually his debut fight. um, Svatoporia, Charles Rosa, Argueta, who I mentioned earlier on the prelims, who we're leaning with, Danny Eag, and Billy Quarantillo. So he's fought pretty respectable guys, a respectable resume. I'll say it again for this fight. He is coming off of 2 losses,
Mhm.
but he was previously on a 4-fight win streak. He last fought August 2023, so not too long of a layoff. You know, it's fair. But Alexander Hernandez, he's just, to me, he's been underwhelming. He looked like he was going to be a great prospect. I think, I don't know if you actually saw that fight years ago between him and Dallin Cerrone. That
Yep.
was a great build up beef. Uh, just awesome fight. Uh, Definitely didn't go Alexander's way there. And he's been really, every other a lot of his fights. He does have the ability to finish. He's very athletic, um, competitive guy. But again, the fights that are most challenging to him, the biggest step up in competition. Um, can't be too confident on him. He does have a unanimous decision win over Jim Miller, which was a bit of a shocker to me, but he recently lost to Bill Algeo. You spoke on him a little bit earlier. So me personally, again, I was a little bit surprised. The seeing the numbers here is actually what swayed my decision a little bit more. Hernandez is minus 200 favorite here, and I'm a little unsure why. I don't see any factor or indicator that makes him that heavy of a favorite. Um, Damon Jackson at plus 165. Again, this is another fight. I typically, again, when I look at these fights and then I factor in betting, um, I don't try to find the way to pick an underdog. I just try to find the underdog that looks beneficial. Uh, and that's where I feel on this one. I feel like Damon Jackson is just a little got a little too much value to overlook at plus 165 against a, you know, pretty much 500 fighter in the UFC. Actually, I believe right, he's 5-4 in his career in the UFC if I have that down right. So, uh I gotta lean with my underdog here, but I also like this one. If you don't like the lean directly for the money line, fight to finish by KO or TKO, uh, probably got decent value on it.
I think that's gonna be a very popular underdog pick because to your point, Hernandez unfortunately just has not lived up to his ceiling in the UFC. There have been times he's gotten finished, against Drew Dober. I was stunned to see the odds for that fight. I saw Drew Dober as an underdog in the morning, and I bet it, and I knew I was safe because throughout the card, the line just kept dropping and dropping and dropping when we got the fight time.
Dober's a dog. He
Dober's an
like
absolute dog, yeah.
so no, yeah, I agree. And the one point I missed, yeah, Alexander Hernandez has lost 3 out of his last 4. It's just one of those again. The value seems a little messy there. I feel like there may be something I'm missing, maybe something that happened during camp. Somebody knows something there. I don't know. Something that I don't know. But the odds to me seem a little bit skewed in both directions.
Also, something to keep in mind, one of those wins he has was a decision in his hometown of Houston. It was a, home cooking decision. If I do say so myself, there was a, little bit of controversy there. They think the judges may have given him one.
Who did he?
Hernandez.
What was? Do you know who the opponent was?
I believe it was 1 or 2 fights after he lost to Cerrone.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. So that was so that might have been even a bit longer ago because he had these past 4 fights. I want to say in the past 3 years, and Jim Miller was 2 fights ago, the last one that he won. So again, and he's got a case to make for ring rust too. He's not the most consistent fighter in there, as far as year round. So this could very well be his exit from the UFC. I feel as well.
Yeah, a lot of guys up against the wall here, and I'll be curious to see how they fight their way out of it. And with that, I'm gonna moving on to our main event, Chris Curtis versus Brendan Allen. I'm all over the Allen side in this fight. I know I like the chalky favorite last week. I like the chalky favorite in the main event again this week. Chris Curtis is a great fighter, right? We've seen him have some excellent performances in there in the octagon. We saw him weather the storm against Buckley, who's an excellent power puncher, and come out with the finish. Unfortunately, though, I think for him, Brendan Allen's just a complete package. We saw him battle through some adversity in his fight against Paul Craig, come out with the W. I think Allen is just the better, more well-rounded fighter here. He has the ground game. He's been able to mix in some striking as well. Kurt is a great fighter, an experienced fighter, and I could see him trying to drag this fight into the later rounds, make Allen go all 5. But for me, I think the line here is very accurate. I see Allen winning. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him win inside the distance as well. So if you want to maybe take that prop bet to pay off some of the juice on the minus 190 money line, or just straight up take the return, up to you. I love Allen here. I think he's going to be able to grapple early, get into those dominant positions, and ultimately close out the fight.
Gross. That's my only other. If that doesn't go that way, this looks like it could definitely be a decision win for sure. Go the distance rather. Um, I could see this one being a bit of a majority grind out on his side as well. Just doesn't really give Chris Curtis really any room to breathe in this one. May not put him away, but I could see like a probably three to 4 rounds at least being pretty majority on his end.
Like an Almeida versus Lewis, where he's just taking him down and he's just not getting back up.
Yeah, and he's not going to be in a position to put him in danger. He's not going to be able to do much from bomb. Hard to make a case for any real submission from bottom or anything like that. Anything freaky. Yeah, I agree. I lean Brendan Allen on that too. He's got a solid resume for himself as well. Um, yeah, I like it.
I love Paul Craig too, so I think that's a quality win for Allen, being able to beat Craig.
Who you beat really matters. I feel like that if there's one thing a lot of people may overlook in a lot of matchups, again, like some, not to say that some of the records are padded, but again, you see a guy, if he has 7 fights in the UFC and okay, yeah, maybe he's a 4-3 fighter, but he's fought all guys that only have 2, 3 losses on their record. And then, you have another fighter, oh, it's his 3rd fight in the UFC and he's fought 2 guys that have, you know, never beat anybody and have 500 records. It's hard to ignore experience, especially in MMA. Experience really means everything, and especially your opponents. Your opponents are the biggest factor of how good you're going to be is who you are beating and when. that's why still some people, even with like Khabib, they just don't respect his overall body of work. When you have, 25 plus wins, but 15 of them are against unknowns, you know what I mean? It
Mhm.
really is the same thing. And it's kind of the case that I made with my pick on the prelims against Matsumoto. He is 14 and 0, but it's not a 14 and 0 pro record. It's a 14 and 0 regional, well, 13 and 0 regional record. You know what I mean? It is their wins at the end of the day, but against who? You know what I mean? And then when you say he's going up against a veteran, it's hard not to lean on that side of it.
Exactly, just to build off that point, I think this is a funny story to end with. I distinctly remember watching the Contender Series last year, and there was a fighter, young guy, great shape, and he fought in his regional promotion. I believe it was Virginia and West Virginia, and his parents owned the promotion, so they were able to get him favorable matchups to help him pad his record. And he
You'd be
went in there.
surprised.
Yep, he went in there against a guy from the European scene, and he was got finished in the first round. I don't wanna, like, kick him while he's down, right? It takes a lot to even make it to the Contender Series, but it's stuff like that. You
Yeah.
have to look at those regional records and go, "Hmm, what
And
happened
and
here?"
and again, it is true. I mean, I've been on the wrong side of these. I want to say it might have been I can't recall the name. I want to say it was Almeida, but there was somebody I want to say like 8, 9 months ago on a card, and they had like a 22 and 0 record, Brazilian guy, and going through his most recent fights, and I think like 7 out of his 8 previous fights, he didn't fight one guy who had over a 500 record. So I was like, oh, this guy's got a fake record. Faded him, and he got a first round submission win. So, you know, I mean, you could still be legit and not have a fantastic resume either. That is how they develop and build guys up. They find, slightly inferior competition and get them to get those nerves out in front of crowds and get all that. And then, you've developed your way because, competition lights are still competition lights at the end of the day. But again, I still feel like who you beat is definitely a big factor to consider.
Alright, and that's gonna wrap it up for me. I like Cavilo, Dumont, and Allen. And Randy, who do you have?
GDR, um, Dan Argueta, and we are going against Alexander Hernandez with Damon Jackson. Three underdogs, three underdog picks. And if we don't like the leans on those, I like the KO, TKO finish on all three of those.
Awesome, and that's gonna wrap it up for us. We're gonna do this again for UFC 300, and that card is gonna be absolutely massive. So many great fighters there. So the one little preview I'll give you for that, my advice for that, you're gonna have the opportunity to bet on excellent fighters in pretty much every fight, many of them at underdog plus money. Be sure to manage your bankroll correctly and don't do anything stupid, right? You don't want to go into UFC 300 and leave down 300 units, right? You don't want to be doing that shit.
No,
So
no, no, no.
so that's just gonna end it for me. If you have anything tonight, good luck, and we'll see you next week.
Take it easy. Thank you for having me on
Peace.
again, man. Thank you.
You got me feeling lucky. I'm putting everything on black.